This is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and today is Tuesday. It's April 4th, 2023. I'm back podcasting. We're going to do it every weekday. I need to recharge on the weekends, but I'm back doing thetruthcentral.com, and we're reviewing news. There's quite a lot of news to review. I'm writing books again, and I'll be publishing articles in a couple of different places. The Gateway Pundit, I'm going to be publishing some articles, and American Thinker on both of those, americanthinker.com and thegatewaypundit.com. So you can follow me there. And we've got plenty of different, go to thetruthcentral.com. You'll see all the different places where we are putting on social media various comments and stories, even on TikTok these days, and doing some green screening. So we're using the technology, and I'm back. I've decided that what's going on in politics is so critical at this point that I want to cover it. So we're going to get right into it. First article I want to cover has to do with this whole move to get Finland into NATO. Now, at the beginning, everybody thinks about Finland and NATO. Well, okay, Finland is Russia's access to the Baltic Sea, and it's where Russia gets out into the Atlantic Ocean from the north. You've got the same issue from Ukraine, which is Russia's access to the Atlantic through the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. Now, if you recall, go back to the impeachment hearings of Donald Trump, when the impeachment hearings on Ukraine, which was the second set of impeachment hearings, and those hearings, the State Department made it clear that the State Department, together with George Soros, has been pushing NATO to expand into Eastern Europe. You had in 2014 in Ukraine what they call the Maidan, M-A-I-D-A-N or D-E-N, I believe, revolution, which was a protest against a Russian-aligned president of Ukraine that Soros and the State Department deposed. I think basically the left has been opposed to Russia ever since the fall of the Berlin Wall and the renunciation of communism in Russia. But you've got the left now wanting to expand NATO. And if Finland comes into NATO, you're going to have a direct threat to Russia. Putin has said again and again that this is a threatening move. Now, I want to explain this in a couple of different ways that are kind of fundamental to understand in terms of the political science issues. First of all, we're going into a 3 superpower world: the United States, Russia, and China. And what I worry about is that we are, in the United States, a bit self-destructing. The economics are very bad right now, and it's because of the going off the gold standard with Richard Nixon in 1971 and the fiat currency. We'll get to that in a moment. But Russia and China are joining forces and are economically very strong right at the moment compared to the United States. At least they're rising in their economies. Our economy is still much larger, a much more robust and active economy than either Russia or China. But at the same time, we're headed into a very, very deep recession. Now, by threatening Russia and the expansion of NATO, one more point I want to make is this goes back historically. In 1939, before World War II was really getting going, the United States did not enter until Pearl Harbor at the end of 1941. Russia, Stalin, and Hitler had a pact. They had a non-aggression pact. They weren't going to attack each other. They were probably each knew that eventually they would go to war, but they decided to wait a while. Russia needed to have some time to build up its whole weakened military. Stalin had just fired a lot of the major generals within the Russian army in purges, and Hitler wanted to focus on Western Europe. He was going after France and Belgium, and he didn't really want to be bothered at the same time with going after Russia. But Russia, in that period of time, that short time before Russia was attacked by Hitler in 1941, Stalin moved into Finland and Ukraine because, again, he had aspirations on Eastern Europe. With these major superpowers in this three-power world, we're each going to have our what they call sphere of influence. In other words, Russia's going to say we want a buffer, which is Eastern Europe. And China's going to say we want a buffer, which is basically the Pacific. China has aspirations certainly to take Taiwan, which I believe they will do. Now, this move by NATO to bring in Finland means that the next country that could come in is Ukraine. Now, if Ukraine gets into NATO, again, we have a proxy war going on where NATO and the United States are providing military arms to Ukraine fighting Russia, Putin. Proxy war means we're really, in a sense, at war with Russia, as NATO is, but it's through Ukraine. In other words, for instance, Vietnam was a proxy war. We were fighting China, but not directly. We were fighting China in Vietnam. We're trying to prevent the expansion of communism into Southeast Asia. So again, China reacted as a buffer zone. China wanted dominance over Southeast Asia and did not want the United States having a major presence in South Vietnam. And again, the testing in a proxy war is preliminary to a hot war between the different nations. And I hope it never gets there. But as we continue to take these aggressive steps expanding NATO, we're edging towards what could become a much more tense situation with Putin. And Putin can always escalate in Ukraine. Right now, he has not applied the major Russian forces to attack Kiev, which is the capital of Ukraine. He's focused on taking over the eastern part of Ukraine, which is largely Russian. Going back to before World War II, actually before World War I, Ukraine was always a split country. The eastern part was largely Russian and Russian-speaking. The western part is largely German, and there are still Nazi groups that are fighting right now today with Zelensky against Putin. The Nazis have never left Ukraine. Germany, of course, has banned Nazism, but in Ukraine, these neo-Nazi groups are very prevalent on the western part of the country. It's a very divided country. But strategically, with Crimea and Sevastopol, the port in Ukraine, Russia is determined to hold on to its access to the Black Sea. And Ukraine has abundant oil and other resources. There's also a history. Russia and Ukraine, in the initial period when Stalin took over, the 1930s, he had a collectivization movement. He was trying to get the farms all to come into these collective farms. And basically, Stalin starved millions of Ukrainians. They actually came in and took away their food, wouldn't let them grow anything. They intentionally starved millions of Ukrainians. Stalin did. It's a great scandal. It was very little reported in the East in the West, because we were supporting Stalin, the United States, with our press, very sympathetic to Stalin when he first came on, with Lenin as well. The 1930s, we had a large, strong movement supporting communism in Russia as if it were a new burst of freedom. Millions died, and it's remembered by the Ukrainians who, especially in the western part of Ukraine, which has been aligned to Germany. So that's complex. But you've got to understand that it's why when you raise the issue of NATO, we saw Donald Trump, who was trying not to expand NATO this way as aggressively in the face of Putin. But the Democrats seem to be determined to do this. Democrats have control of the State Department right now, and did even under Trump. If you remember, all the Democrats from the State Department that testified against Trump because he was not following their plan to get Ukraine into NATO, which was a plan that extends back as far as the Obama administration. Okay, now I want to go to the second topic, which again has some complexity to it. but it's important. It's about this OPEC cutting production. And you remember how I said yesterday that Japan has broken with the G7. It's going to buy oil from Russia and not respect the $60 a price cap, which was imposed by Western Europe, but imposed by the EU once Russia cut off the supply of natural gas to the EU. The EU imposed sanctions on Russia because of the Ukrainian war. Now, what this article that I'm referring to here demonstrates is, again, a very complex investment issue. Futures, when you buy futures in stock investing, stock and bonds, a future, you're betting on the future price of what the commodity is going to be, oil. Now, if you think the price of oil is going to go down, you buy what are called shorts. You're buying a bet that it's going down. If, in fact, you think it's going up, you buy a long option, which is you expect it to go up. Now, Wall Street had been buying an incredible number of shorts on oil because they expected a recession. They expected that oil was going to be less in demand globally and the price was going to go down. Now, the calculation that Putin and Saudi Arabia made, because remember now, OPEC Plus includes Russia. So the calculation that they made was that if they reduced production, they could increase their revenues. They would blast Wall Street. All these millions of dollars of people who were in short futures lost their contracts. They lost money because when you're betting it's going to go down, oil, and it goes up, your contract becomes worthless. You just lost everything on that bet. And so therefore, it was an attempt to, A, punish the Wall Street investors. Secondly, it was an indication of the dissatisfaction of both Saudi Arabia and Russia with the Biden administration. The Biden administration has not been supportive of the goals of Saudi Arabia. Donald Trump was getting agreements with Saudi Arabia, largely to constrain Iran. But Iran now is tied together with Russia, supplying drones and other military weapons, testing them out in Ukraine, and China appears to be going to do the same. That proxy war is going to expand. And I believe that sometime fairly soon, you'll see Russia increase military offensive, possibly even this spring, against Kiev. And when that happens, that war is going to escalate. Now, the bottom line for everybody listening to this is that I foresee oil is going to come back to $100 a barrel. And it's right now at about $80 a barrel, but that's not going to last. It's going to, the pressure here with the reduced supply, even with the economy slowing down, is going to mean that both Russia and OPEC are going to make sure that they get top dollar for the oil that they want to sell, even if it's reduced quantities. It's going to make profits for the oil companies as well. Their stocks are going to boom. But these dynamics are very fluid and they reflect the politics going on because you've got increasing tension between the United States, Russia, and China, with Russia and China getting closer together, with Iran, with Saudi Arabia, this whole alliance is forming, which is very much against the United States and Western Europe at a time when I believe our banking crisis has only begun, because the amount of debt we have is just so overwhelming as a nation and as individuals. We have $30 trillion in our national debt, which is more than our gross domestic product, our GDP. And that's a very precarious situation. So I'm going to stop for a minute. And Chris, my producer, Chris, you want to comment on this? This is quite a lot we've covered so far, but it's very important.
We do have a lot. I used to produce a business show called Money Matters on WABC, WOR, and sometimes
I used to watch it.
The Answer. It's a good show. It was a good show. Gary Goldberg was the host. A frequent guest was John Hofmeister, former Shell Oil president. Good man. He passed away I believe it was last year. He was a regular guest, and often he would suggest that oil was finally going to reach 100. He was all the time, or virtually every time, he was on the way to being correct until some kind of event stopped it from happening. We did have $100 oil, obviously, during the recession, and of course, that was happening. We had very high priced oil during the Obama era. It did lower because of our lack of dependency on it. I mean, during the Trump era, rose again. I remember OPEC saying their comfort threshold was somewhere in the $60 to $70 range, but that doesn't mean anything now. Understanding the way things are going, the way the Western nations are either overly dependent on foreign oil or they're working on alternative energies, but the ones that aren't going to work, as you've explained several times in the past podcasts, and you will be talking to people about in the future, OPEC and any of the oil producing companies, save for the ones who can produce and just won't, like ours, will find a way to raise prices and take advantage.
Well, this is, I mean, I'm focusing on this issue because it's so vitally important. It's not going to be adequately covered or explained. Yes, Donald Trump will be indicted today, and it'll be the first president that has ever been indicted. And I think this is an overreach by the Democrats. But the point is that'll sort itself out. What's critical right now should be for everyone listening is that the economics are going to get very difficult. And it's not a time to be in debt if you can avoid it. The issues of higher costs of living, prices at the supermarket. I mean, go to a restaurant today and look at the bill at the end of the meal. It's pretty astounding what costs have gone to across the board and almost everything you buy or do. Go to even a sporting event and see how much the ticket price is these days. It's pretty astounding. And that's going to get worse because of the fiat currency and the dynamics that we've set up. I think we're going to go into a worse recession than we have been in some, maybe since the Depression. And I hate to say that, but I am agreeing with Nouriel Roubini, who I continue to cover. Now, Chris, if you can find and put up the cover of my book on the truth about energy, I want to make one more point about energy, global warming, and climate change. I think it's one of the best books I've ever written. It's over 300 pages. It shows how the climate movement, global warming, came out of the Malthusians, too many people in the world, and it's been taken over by the neo-Marxists. But the point I want to make right now in relationship to what we're talking about is I discuss in the book that if oil, natural gas, and coal continue to escalate in price, or we continue to say we've got to use green energy, wind and solar, and we use less oil and natural gas especially, we're going to find that it's a very inflationary, prices are going to go up dramatically because solar and wind do not work as well. They're not nearly as effective. They're designed, this whole global warming movement is designed to end capitalism, and it will do so if it's allowed to continue, because a major industrial state relies upon having a affordable price of energy. When energy prices go up or are being manipulated to go up, as they are right now, you're going to find that everything goes up in price because oil is still the fundamental energy used by the world. And the Russia, China, India, the BRIC nations have no intention of stopping to use oil and natural gas. They need the energy at a reasonable price, and they need it abundantly. China is producing more coal and using more coal than any other nation in the world, and I don't believe China has any intention of stopping to do so. As the world goes into a recession, we're going to find, again, the double drag economically of the green movement. Already this ESG investing is getting a backlash because people are realizing ESG investing means you get lower returns. Now, I want to move on to continue with a couple of additional topics. Gold is right at $2,000 right now, and that's a resistance level. And economic trading in stocks, there's resistance levels, a high price and a low price. So if gold gets near $2,000, it seems to bounce back from that, down lower than $2,000. Or if it gets below a certain range, like $1,800, it bounces up. If gold breaks through $2,000 and holds that, there'll be a new resistance level. I think that gold could double in its price in the next maybe 4 years, because during these economic downturns, you'll see that gold is one of the things that really gains in value. Now, if you look at the article that I've linked to here, what the article demonstrates is that we, in 1971, by going off the gold standard and creating this fiat money, which became the world's reserve currency, was since the end of World War II, governments began to print as much money as they wanted to. And essentially, with the low interest rates that the Fed kept in place, we were having a bubble. Now, the central banks have been buying gold in massive quantities. The World Gold Council reported the demand for gold rose 28% year to year in the third quarter of 2022, with a large portion of that, significant orders coming from the world's central banks. And again, it emphasizes the importance of gold as an inflation hedge. Now, this is one of our sponsors. And if you could, Chris, show the Walking Liberty $50 offer from Swiss America. I'm going to encourage people to get some gold and silver. Now, Swiss America is our partner. They've been our partner since, my partner since 2004. I've worked with them. They involve consultative selling. If you can get, as an introductory offer, the Walking Liberty $50 for just over $13 a piece, which is about the value of the gold that's in them. I mean, it's a very, very reasonable offer. And silver that's in them, silver in the Walking Liberty $50. The silver that's in them, silver is rising faster proportionally, percentage-wise, than gold is. It's at about now $23 an ounce. I think it's easily seen that quickly silver could hit $30 again. But again, I expect silver to double in the next few years, given what's going on. And even if you say, look, I don't have thousands of dollars. If you do, depending upon what you've got, you should put a significant portion of your assets into gold and silver. It's going to preserve your purchasing power, because as inflation occurs, inflation or increase in the price of gold is going to happen again. And gold is one of the few anti-recessionary measures you can take. All your assets are valued in dollars. The purchasing power of the dollar diminishes. Your assets have really lost value. And the value of the dollar has diminished dramatically since 1971, when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. So I very much encourage everybody to think hard about doing some gold and silver investing. And of course, it helps us if you go to the website and click the link. Now, I'm covering one more story this morning, and that is the story on Metformin. Now, Metformin is a diabetes drug, and it's very commonly prescribed. You'll find that people who have, it's known worldwide as a diabetes drug, and it's approved by the FDA. But this is an article in the Wall Street Journal today, which actually did surprise me to see the journal covering this. And basically what Metformin is saying, what the journal is saying, is that this Metformin, which lowers blood sugar levels in people with type 2 diabetes, it's been used in Europe as a diabetes medication since the 1950s. And the FDA approved it as a diabetes medication in the 1990s. But researchers have found and have been showing it has longevity effects. At least since the 1980s, people taking Metformin seem to be living longer. Now, the studies are not universally in to say that 100% it's the case, but there's enough indication that Metformin works. that an awfully lot of people are taking it. Now, if you'll go to, Chris, another thing, I want to begin to get you more familiar with how the website works. If you go to the sponsors and you look at My Vital C, this is another longevity medication. It's not a medication, it's a supplement. Sorry, it's not a prescription, it's a supplement. It's not FDA approved. You don't need an FDA. You don't need a prescription to get it. But it's based on a molecule, which is carbon-60. Carbon-60 is a remarkable molecule. It was only discovered about 30 or 40 years ago. I've just written a book on this with Chris Burries, who is the co-founder of My Vital C. I've been taking it for about 4 years, and its longevity impacted clarity of mind, better sleeping. Does a lot of benefits, which I can personally attest to. Don't have medical studies that I can point to. The FDA does not approve it. And by the way, the FDA does not approve Metformin for longevity, but off-label, which means a doctor can take an FDA prescribed medication and under the FDA rules prescribe it for any other ailment or illness that the doctor believes will benefit the patient. It's off-label. So doctors can and do prescribe metformin for longevity. Now, I've also been in telemedicine. I'm creating new telemedicine sites, and one of them will be getlongevitymeds.com, and Chris Burries will be my partner. I'm going to have Dean Heskin and Chris Burries on the show. We're going to cover issues of investing and issues of longevity much more thoroughly. Longevity is, of course, an issue to me. I'm more active in many ways than I've ever been. I have no intention of retiring. I did for a while. At that time, my wife was very concerned that she did not want to go through another round of having Mueller after me. Well, that issue is now behind me, and I'm back doing what I want to do, which is to do podcasts and to continue covering the news for you, to try to raise the level of everyone's understanding of these issues. I think investing, in addition to the politics, which is a focus that's a bit new for you from me, but I spent almost 20 years working in finance with creating bank marketing programs for retail customers and annuities and securities. I worked with banks all over the United States and around the world. I created 2 companies which sold $1 billion a year in annuities and $1 billion a year in mutual funds. I'm going back to that. I'm also wanting to expand in telemedicine because I think it's the future. And I will be, when we launch this getlongevitymeds.com, which is in the final stages of the website preparation, we'll be launching it here very shortly. It will be able to provide you with off-label prescriptions like metformin for diabetes and for longevity. I think there are ways in which people can today take measures which will ensure that they live longer and better. Chris, any final comments?
Well, I'm all for longevity. That I can tell you.
Right. I don't know many people who aren't.
You also have, and something that I was very interested in with, I want to go back to My Vital C, that hair rejuvenation kit. As you can see, I'd like to put some of that on. So
well, it works. It works. I mean, I can attest to all the products that they have. They've got creams and lotions, which are very good for your skin. This carbon-60, which is a unique molecule. It has 60 carbon atoms in a cage structure like a soccer ball or a geodesic dome. In fact, it's called fullerene after Buckminster Fuller. Is a remarkable molecule. It has many different properties, but among the health properties, and it has to be specially prepared to be consumable, and it's consumable in olive oil or coconut oil, but it takes high quality to be good, and this company is the best. I was introduced to the whole idea of carbon-60 by an Israeli physician, And it came to me at a particular time of stress when I was being questioned by Mueller. They were threatening to indict me. They never did. But the point is, I found remarkable properties and health properties from taking this My Vital C. It also works for pets, by the way. Your dogs and cats can take it, and they like it.
Mhm. It's special flavors for them. I have the salmon flavor for the cats, and the dogs like the bacon flavor. I might take the bacon flavor for myself. I could go for that.
Well, you might like, I don't know, take the regular one, but let your dog have the bacon flavored one. At any rate, look, these are great products, and I'm happy to present them, and we're going to be talking about them more. I think the perspective of health, perspective of politics, which are not aimed at destroying, but are aimed at building. These are things I'm deeply interested in. I have more books coming out, and we'll be talking about those in the show and putting more up on the website. The website's still under development. I'm very pleased. Chris has done a good job of putting this together. And if you'll just explore it, you're going to see a lot of different things. We're going to cover cryptocurrencies as well. I'm very positive about XRP, which I do own, full disclosure. I'm going to promote XRP because I think it works, and I think it's going to be a long-time winner. I think they're going to win their suit against the SEC, and that could happen quickly. But we need to remain positive in this time. We look for solutions in our personal lives as well as a country. And I always say, in the end, God always wins, and God will win here too. I hate to think sometimes of what consequences could be in a secular world that does not follow the principles of living according to God's law. But God will win, as always happens in the end. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Today is Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. We'll be with you tomorrow and every day this week. We will not be broadcasting on the weekends, but every weekday we will have a broadcast. Thank you for joining us. Please like the program. Please like us on various social media. I'm even on TikTok. Look for me there. And we're on Apple Podcasts, so please boost us there as well. But we want to get these sites built. We're back on YouTube. You can find us in many different channels. Thank you for joining us. God bless.